Right, many thanks to Ronald for that story. Now, Statistics Sierra Leone put out a press statement on Friday, April 6th, informing the public that it could not go ahead with the midterm housing and population census, which it had slated for April 19th, which was yesterday, because of a delay in the shipment of 20,000 electronic tablets to be used for the process from Kenya to Sierra Leone. This is the midterm housing and population census. This midterm, something is wrong with me this morning. I think I need a cup of tea.
This is the third time the midterm housing and population census has been
postponed. Thank you very much. However, yesterday in an emergency parliamentary sitting summoned by President Biyo, some parliamentarians objected to the tabling of the 2021 census, citing that the parliamentary sitting itself was illegal because the speaker failed to consult with the opposition to stand in order for subsection 3. So this morning, to discuss this issue, among other things, we have in the studio Andrew Lavalley, who is the director, executive director for Institute for Governance Reform, IGR, and Saliu Kamara, spokesperson for National Elections Watch, NEW. Good morning, gentlemen, and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah. I hope my producer will not take me out of this.
We'll bear with you today, Samuel.
but let's start off with you, Andrew. I mean, before going to the postponement of a census, what happened yesterday, I mean, amongst honorable men and women? What did that speak to in terms of having national conversation and pushing things for good governance?
I think it's worrisome. My worry is we should be careful not to arrive at 2023 with a choice between anger and revenge. And so, to me, it behoves us in civil society and the media to start lowering the temperature. That's why I really am happy to have this conversation, to sit in this conversation on how do we manage the process of the midterm census to lower the temperature and give a future to Sierra Leone. There is quite a lot that is at stake. I mean, a lot of politicians have buried their faith in the census process. Right. You know, when I was young, my maths teacher, he's Paul Senger, David Senger's dad, in Form 1. He used to flog us, beat us for show work. So you have to show walking. I don't know whether Antonia you know about that. So you have to show walking. You cannot just say this that is equals to 67. You have to take steps. I think what Start Sierra Leone is doing with the last census, the audit of the last census, if you say we have 7 million people, you have to show that we have 7 million people. So this is where we're having this controversy. We cannot have a census that benefits any region. We should not have an APC census, we should not have an SLPP census. We should have a Sierra Leone census. And if the midterm census is not going right, we'll condemn it again until we get it right. So I think it behoves all of us, opposition, ruling party, to take this process beyond themselves. I mean, let us, for goodness sake, think about Sierra Leone for the first time. I have never seen in this country, and I continue to say, I have never seen in this country, if you go to Bombali, politicians, you know, clamoring, say, Bombali people do not have drugs. I have never seen politicians standing in the gap, say, for example, for Bo district, say, Bo, the kids are not getting textbooks. It's always about how do I get to power. So I think Sierra Leoneans need to understand that this APC, SLPP, they are way beneath us. What we saw in Parliament yesterday is the same playbook in the last 61 years. And this week in particular is a week of reflection. It's the same playbook. There is nothing that we have seen that we've never seen before. I think this is a moment of sober reflection on how we can move forward. Is the system not working for us? Are we fighting because we have first past the post and winner take all? Can we change the system so that we can have build bridges of accommodation? But to me, central to all of this is the importance of data for our planning. I only hope, and I hope, there will have been a way we can just, you know, take what politicians need from the census, say, let us really collect data for our own planning purposes. And mind you, Samuel, is a population and housing census. I want to be in a position where I can live in New York, and I come from number 5 Robane Road in McKinney, or number 5 4th Street, Jaboma, and I just plot in, and I say there are 10 of us in this house, 10 people in this house. It's a mud house. We have 2 adults, 3 school-going children. We cannot have Central Statistics Office national data that is fraudulent. We cannot, this cannot be our future. So to me, they can fight all the fights they care about, but at the end of the day, citizens have to hold Central Statistics to account to run the media.
I'm tempted to ask you this question before having a bite from Salu. The fight that is ongoing between the APC and the SLPP, questioning the process, I mean, from people that I've interacted with, it's as a result of the opposition in fear of governments using the data at the end of the day to give itself an edge come 2023. That is to say, you have about 37,000 people that would make up a constituency. So what will the figures say after the conduct of the census? I mean, are the figures going to give more people, more constituencies to the southeast? I mean, the 2 regions considered to be the strongholds of the SLPP. Are we going to see more districts coming up in the southeast? That, I mean, those are the issues that we are condemned, that we are that people faulted in the 2015 census. Oh, so those guys, the figures that came in 2015, we saw new districts, new constituencies, and so that's the fear for many people have interacted.
It's a legitimate grounds of fear, but what we need to distinguish, we need to make a distinction between having an excuse and having a reason. Right. Is it an excuse not to correct the wrong of the past, or is it a legitimate reason? So to me, it could be both.
Right.
Because if the midterm census go right, if it goes right, maybe, and just maybe, it will correct the mistakes of the past. But again, the fear of the opposition, maybe it will be in fraud, just like the previous census was.
Right.
So either way, I see the appetite. I see where they are coming from with the appetite. Say, let's stop the process. Let this not happen. But here is one hope that I have. I have the hope that we can checkmate this process and ensure that it is properly done. If it is not properly done, it cannot be validated. So, for example, you need, for those that are monitoring the census, you actually need to understand all of the census processes. There is a cartographic map updating process. There's going to be the enumeration. There's going to be the post-census enumeration.
Right.
So 3 things that we need to be mindful of that made the last census to go wrong. Point number 1, the census process should be inclusive. In the last census, we are very critical of the census.
Right.
When it came to a time to take critical decisions, we are not in the room. I think what is useful is for SLPP, APC, NGC, C4C, NEW, IGR, SLAG, critical actors. I mean, Statistics Sierra Leone is being boastful that it's going to be a people's census.
Right. Critical
actors should be in the census committees at the national and at the district level. We begin to lower the temperature. So it will not be Statistics Sierra Leone taking decision. At the moment, right now, we have the 4 political parties in parliament that are in the governing council, the advisory council, but that's not enough. So we have to make sure the process is inclusive. The next one is to look at the various benchmarks to verify what Stats Sierra Leone is doing. So, say for example, if you do, there is what they call the cartographic map updating. And mind you, viewers, census is so much demystified. It's so much mystified. I think what we need to do is to demystify the process so that everybody understands. It's just a question of counting how many of you live in this country. What are your household conditions? If we cannot count the number of Sierra Leoneans living here, how can we ever manufacture a bicycle? So basically, it has to be demystified. And so by that, I mean, Say, for example, if you do the cartographic map updating, what I mean by cartographic map is when you divide Sierra Leone into different just blocks.
Right.
We call it enumeration area. Enumeration is, an enumerator is someone that goes and collects the data. So the person will be confined to that area. It's normally 80 to 120 households to collect data from them. So it's normally around 11 to 13,000 enumeration areas. So we call them EAs that are divided across the country. So normally, the first area where census is being rigged is the preparatory stage. So all parties need to make sure that right at the preparatory stage, the cartographic process is not will go right. So by that we mean, if Statistics Sierra Leone, at the time they complete doing this, the cartographic map updating, before even doing the census, we have the right to say we are demanding 1% of your EAs for it to be verified. And we can divide ourselves. And we actually need development partners, donors to finance the monitoring. So NEW can take maybe 2 EAs, IGR can take 2 EAs, APC can take 2 EAs, SLAGE can take 5 EAs, depending on your strength. And at the end of the day, we verify that indeed this is a fair process. If our result is in line with theirs by 95%, we can give it a clean bill. If the data is wrong by over 5%, then we can just say, let us not do the census. So there are clear checks. The next check will be the enumeration. So once the census is done, after the census, we will call on Statistics Sierra Leone to randomly select 1% of the EAs. We'll go again, physically count 1% of the EAs. We go and we come and match the data. You know what happened in 2015? At the time of the data matching, when the post-census piloting was done, enumeration was done, all of those that were critical of the census process, we are not in the room.
But
so,
in this case as well, this census, the census we're speaking about, was actually meant to start yesterday. So had everything you're talking about now been done?
No. Until to me, I don't even mind postponement. Until it's right, let's postpone. Until it's, we don't even need to rush it. I think, so first and foremost, we need to correct the data in 2016, because, in 2015, because of that data, Sierra Leone is losing quite a lot. We did not win the MCC award on infant mortality, for example, because the census data is in error. UNICEF has finished immunizing almost all of the kids in Sierra Leone, but the population is at variance with the data that is not manipulatable. In fact, when the census was done, we looked at the census figures and we compared it with data that is not manipulatable. Say, for example, infant immunization data or antenatal clinic attendees. We realized that, for example, in Bo and Kenema, more and more women are recording antenatal clinic attendance than Bombali. But the question is, I don't even want to sound the north-south, north versus south divide. If you go to the south, our data tells us, the census data report, it says that Pujong grew more than Bo. Even the statistician general, he doesn't believe that. Nobody in Sierra Leone will believe that Pujong grew more than Bo, right? There are chiefdoms in Kenema, say for example, Kando Lekpeama, Lower Bambara, that grew negative. And for you to say a chiefdom grew negative, it has to be contingent on a number of factors. Either there has been mass movement of people or there has been famine in those communities. None of those two conditions happen. In fact, in 2004, because when you compare the 2004 data and the 2015 data, we realized that in 2004, there were smaller communities, in those communities where they said they recorded negative growth, than those communities that compared to those communities in 2015. So these are some of the challenges. And I believe it doesn't hurt for people to say, no, let us lower the temperature, let us count. Maybe, just maybe, 2015 was right. If 2015 is right, fine. if the SLPP and Malam or the Statistician General, if they go about playing games, they will be brought to book as well. So as a nation, we have to open our minds. We have to just release our minds. So I think this idea of being captured between APC and SLPP censors, it's really unhelpful, because no one. I mean, I read an interesting article written by, Yusuf Bangura. Yusuf Bangura said, with all the Limba dominance in governance, how has Limba communities improved? And I would say the same with all of Mende dominance in government. For the past 20 years, we've seen SLPP rule for 20 years, we've seen APC rule for 35 years of independence, 5 years of military rule. What has changed about ethnic communities that actually claim this is my party? So I think it behoves all of us to demand standards, and the first way to demand standards is statistical standards. Clearly, there are incentives for politicians to manipulate data because it's what keeps them in power. And if you cannot show working in the census, you cannot show working in elections. If you cannot show working in elections, you cannot show working in governance. So we actually need to make it harder for politicians to win elections until they play to a fair game.
Saliu, there's an issue at hand now regarding the midterm census. First of all, we saw what happened in Parliament yesterday, and the controversy on whether the president has the right to summon the parliamentary sitting, and whether the speaker followed due process to actually summon parliamentarians to have that discussion that they were meant to have yesterday in Parliament. Now, what is the opinion of NEW on this?
Thank you very much. I think what happened in Parliament yesterday is really unfortunate, because it shows that, we still have problems about our capacity and our willingness to actually dialogue as a nation, to actually build consensus on critical issues like the midterm census. But we at the National Election Watch saw this coming long time ago.
All right, welcome back. The show is still Wake Up Salute. We do apologize for that break. It's due to power cuts. We still have with us in the studio Andrew Lavalley from IGR, Saliu Kamara from NEW. And in our studio too, we've been joined by the Communications Director for Statistics Sierra Leone, Samuel Ansumana. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Samuel. Thank you very much.
Stay there with us. Saliu, Antonia asked a question.
Yeah, as I was saying, the events that happened yesterday in Parliament, were unfortunate, to say the least. But the good thing about it is that it shows the inability or the unwillingness of Sierra Leoneans to actually engage in creative dialogue. So that we can build consensus on very critical issues. Otherwise, what happened in Parliament yesterday would have been avoided. But we at the National Election Watch saw this coming, because when the president proclaimed the conduct of the census in July 21, 2020, we came up with a series of concerns. And the first concern we raised was, why was midterm census prioritized over the COVID? And at that time, COVID was raging. And also, it was at that time that we get a report that, people are dying all over the country as a result of malaria. So we thought in the midst of COVID, and also we had competing national demands. But the government of statistics, prioritized the midterm census over all of those. So we raised that concern. And the other concern we raised was participation and inclusivity. Because at the time the proclamation was made and preparations were made for the conduct of the census, we realized that, most of the key stake actors were not involved. Even political parties were not involved in the process, and raised that issue as well. And also, we also raised the issue of awareness raising and educating the populace, Because if we talk of the census, it's about the people. And if you are doing an exercise that concerns the people, it's good that the people know about the exercise and how they can be a part of that. Especially when one of the reasons given for the midterm census was to actually look at the gaps that occurred in the 2015 Census Act. We raised the issue that, if you say there are gaps, then it's good that you engage the people so that the populace will know what the gaps are and what actually brought about the gaps and what steps you have put in place to ensure that those gaps did not repeat. And the other issue raised also is about these consultations, because this is a very critical national issue. And it can only have the outcome that you really want if you consult sufficiently. But if we do not consult adequately, at the end of the day, we'll end up getting what we saw yesterday in Parliament. Then we raise the issue of planning, because we believe that this is a critical national exercise, and it requires careful planning. But if you look at it, it was like the whole exercise was not properly planned. Because come look at it, there was no government policy framework that actually can serve as a reference point for this census. Because if you look at the medium-term national development plan, it wasn't there. If you look at even the SLPP New Direction Manifesto, that one was not there. And we look at even the strategic plan of Statistics Sierra Leone, it wasn't there as well. So we are worried or concerned what brought about this impromptu midterm census.
Does that breed paranoia in your sense?
Yeah, well, we just wanted to know because, like I said, if you're doing a census, it's a critical exercise. You have to plan properly and you have to plan carefully. And I even read the press statement of the World Bank. They emphasize that too. Say this is very important for development purposes, but the exercise for it to be conducted, properly, there need to be careful planning. And you can see that careful planning was not even there. What we're seeing, goes to show that there wasn't careful planning. Other than that, initially, the midterm census was scheduled for December 4, 2020. December 4 came, it was postponed to April 19, 2021. And yesterday was April 19. Instead of starting the census, what did we see? We saw a whole lot of commotion in Parliament.
And amidst all of this, one would think that it had given enough time to the government to actually lay the Census Act in Parliament. The census was pronounced by the president in July 2020. Yeah. And it's been almost 7 months, 8 months since that proclamation. Why has there been dates for the census to commence, but still no Census Act in Parliament?
Well, that's why we are saying the only reading we can get from that is the census was not carefully planned. Because if you plan carefully, you schedule a date, there is no way that day will come unless certain things beyond your control happen. But in this case, we did not see that. We only believe that it wasn't actually properly planned for. And for us at NEW, we also raised the concern of the timing. Because we as NEW, we observe election and we are very much concerned about the activities of institutions that has a bearing on elections. So we also raised the concern of the timing of this conduct of the census. Because according to the election laws of Sierra Leone, the last elections were conducted in 2018. And in 2023, we're supposed to have presidential and parliamentary elections and local council elections in 2022. Now, if we start this census now, whatever, take it or leave it, minus or plus, we're going to have the outcome in 2022. And at that time, we'll be preparing for local council elections. And if you look at the reasons given, in the initial reasons given, initially when the president made the proclamation, he said the outcome of the census will help for proper planning, which is good. We believe in that. And he also said the outcome of the census will ensure equitable distribution of resources. And he also said the outcome of this census will help to inform the implementation of the medium-term National Development Plan. And this medium term is between 2019 and 2023. So if the outcome of the census or the result of the census comes out in 2022, what use will we have of this census when 2022 will be local council elections and 2023 will be presidential and parliamentary elections?
I'm just curious, as you say that these institutions or the conduct of the census, for example, has bearing to elections. The president and the government, the president is pushing for a proportional representation system. So whether more constituencies or not, it's not going to be APC or SLPP if he succeeds in that drive. The government is pushing for taking away partisan politics from local councils. I mean, what would this census mean if conducted to those drives if the government and the president succeed in actually taking partisan politics from local councils and go back to proportional representation and not these constituency things, party representation?
Yeah, I think that's why we are concerned, because whenever we have a census, depending on the population density, there is the likelihood of, changing the territorial boundaries. And when you change the territorial boundaries, there is the tendency also to have new electoral boundaries. That will bring new constituencies, new wards, and all of those. And once that happens and we are to conduct election, local council election in 2022, and presidential and parliamentary election in 2023. So there is the tendency for those elections to either be postponed or perhaps to rush these very important processes, and at the end of the day, we make the same mistakes that we're talking about now about the 2015 census. So that's why we're saying this is good. A national census is good because it has a value, it can add value to the development effort of the country. But we are looking at all of these parameters. One, the prioritization of the census over the COVID, which was raging. And we also looked at, the issue of inclusivity, the issue of participation, when the stakeholders were not consulted, we are not part of the process. We also looked at the issue
Who are
of,
these relevant stakeholders that should be part of the process that are
even all of us are stakeholders, including political parties. At the time it was proclaimed, we learned they were not consulted. They did not even know about the process when it was about to start. So that's why we raised the issue. And we are also key stakeholders because the census is about us. Development is about the citizens. And it's good that the citizens be a part of it. Because they're not going to register trees, they're not going to register houses, they're going to register people. Even the houses they're going to count, they belong to people. So we have to know the process. We have to get a buy-in into the process so that we all can cooperate, we all can support it. So at the end of the day, whatever comes out of it will be owned by all of us.
Okay. Quickly, I know we have to move over to Sumana. But quickly, Andrew, the fear of boundaries, delimitation is coming up, even from new. Antonia asked a question about, it's 10 months since the pronouncement of the census by President Bill in July of 2020. It's only now that the statutory instrument number 4 is being tabled to Parliament. So the process, or the processes that we've undertaken as a nation in conducting this census, has it been legal in the first place? Have those processes been legal in the first place? Or is this not why these other players are thinking that, oh, there is something fishy going on? There is some hidden agenda of the government trying to push these things? Because if processes have been taken without tabling the statutory instrument that should give, way for the conduct of the census, then it speaks volume.
So I think the question you need to add to that, for new and opposition parties, is that is there an appetite for a new midterm census for them? Because what I'm hearing is more of an excuse than an appetite to correct the wrong of the past. Right. And I believe for every well-meaning Sierra Leonean, you have to note point number 1, that the data we currently have for elections, for development, is flawed. The chaos we're now having in Parliament, just last night, I took the presidential results and I just plotted the presidential figures by PR. You show a different configuration. When you collate, and you should be more interested in this, when you collate the parliamentary figures, APC, SLPP had 957,000 votes parliamentary. APC had 967,000 votes. So the difference was around 12,000. 955,000, 967,000. The difference is 12,000, which is 1 seat. But the difference in parliament is 20 seats. So yesterday night, I was looking on social media, and some people, after our conversation, some people were saying, why is it that some districts, in some constituencies, people are getting 2,000 votes to go to parliament, and in other places, people are getting 25,000 to go to parliament? I think as Sierra Leoneans, we need to be honest with one another, that the data collected in 2015 was problematic. And how we go about correcting that is to ensure that what happened in 2015 will not happen again. I think that those are some of the things. There are many things on some of those policy proclamations that you said that I disagree with. I don't think we should go non-partisan local council. I think we should strictly go by PR system, and at local council we have PR system. Imagine if we had the PR system, there would have been no Ansu Lansana being taken out of his constituency. APC will have got 2 seats in parliament, in Kailau, at least a seat in Kenema. And we have to force political parties to abandon one region strategy to a national strategy. So I think our colleagues, in reflecting on on moving forward, I think we have to forget about this, scare tactics and rumor mongering. No, this is. There are ways to monitor census process. One of the ways to monitor census process is to ensure that you rightly mentioned inclusiveness. And we cannot just say, no, this political party is not included. You actually have to go to Statistics Australia, ask them what are the structures. Let them give us the list of the structures and then tell us. So we can now come on radio and on TV to say, we have looked at the publicity committee, we have looked at and I'm happy it's there. So tell us who are in the structures and how do you need to improve on the structures. So there's a cartographic map updating process. How is that going? What is the monitoring doing? So I don't think it's, I don't think the question of, I heard Salu mentioning that census was prioritized over COVID.
Yes.
I don't think that was the case. No, I don't think that was the case. There has never been a case when the government of Sierra Leone said, we are taking from COVID funds to fund census. I mean, the census is largely funded by the World Bank. So there is no way you can say no, for COVID funding has been taken.
It's not about the money.
No. If
Just
we
the
say,
exercise
we in the last census, we advocated for a postponement of the census. And when we advocated for postponement, we laid benchmarks. We said the cartography should be properly done. We said the recruitment of personnel at the district level should be properly done. You cannot get people that manipulate. So I believe these are some of the tangibles we need to bring in the conversation, not opinions. Let's discuss facts. What is going wrong about the process that we need to correct? So I think in the absence of that, we'll boil down the conversation to scare tactics, and instead of, I don't think we can stall government process because I believe, or I have the conviction that it will go bad at the end of the day. I believe as civil society, what we need to do is to suggest corrective actions. And we advocate that those corrective actions are being implemented.
All right,
Okay,
we've
just
had...
just briefly. Yeah, I mean, Mr. Andrew Lavalley mentioned earlier about one of the reasons that made the last census to actually, came out the way it came out. Faulty with a lot of gaps. He said that, after the data had been collected and in the room where it was to be processed, the key stakeholders were not there. He mentioned it, he said it here. And now this is what we are trying to do. We don't want a repeat of that situation. That's why right from the beginning we are saying that we are mindful of the importance of this thing. But if those who are, managing this process are also mindful of how important this process is, let it be open. Let key stakeholders come in so that at the end of the day, we'll not get a repeat of what happened in 2015, wherein only a few people will go in, sit in there, analyze the data in the absence of
Okay,
others.
we'll come back to you.
We've had Samuel Ansumana in the studio for a while now, and I know you've been following up. We'll get to you in a bit, but it's 9 o'clock in our studios, and we need to take a summary of the news. We'll be... Right, welcome back to Wake Up Sierra Leone on AYV Television, Channel 33. We're also on radio, that's 101.6 FM, and on Facebook at Africa Young Voices Media Empire Facebook page, where you can drop your comments and ask questions on the issues we're discussing this morning. We're still talking about the midterm population and housing census and the incidents at Parliament yesterday. And we're just about to move to our studio 2, where we have Samuel Ansumana, the Director of Communications for Statistics Sierra Leone. Good morning to you. I know you've been following the conversation.
Thank you very much.
Right, this is the third time we've seen a postponement of the census from December to April 19th, and April 19th was yesterday, and we've seen another postponement due to the late delivery of the tablets, which are meant to be used to collect data. So just give us a background on what Statistics Sierra Leone has been doing in order to put things in place for the census to commence.
Okay, so let me just first and foremost make a correction. This is the second time we're postponing, except you want to understand the setting of the date as postponement. The original date was the 4th of December. Then we postponed for the first time to the 19th of April. So this is actually the second postponement. It's not the third, okay? All right. That being said, the things we have been doing, we've done a lot, okay? And chief of them is to ensure that we get this country mapped so that we can lay the platform, a very fine platform for the actual census enumeration. Okay? Now, assume we had even finished doing that, but then the tablets which were to come from Kenya are not here. We were not going to be able to do the census. All right? And that is what precipitated the postponement of the census this time round. All right? So, as it is, we've done publicity, we had gone around the country, we had sensitized people, we had done lots of engagement. I was listening and I heard one of the panelists saying, the person from News saying, there is no inclusion, we've not included political parties and stuff like that. You know, we find that very strange as an institution, okay? In fact, when that press release came out, we wanted to do a presser, but our way of doing things, the leadership and myself that directs the communication strategy of the institution, it is not our way to really embark in a banter with people. We don't do that because we are purely a technical institution. The political aspect of it, or what have you, we leave to the ministry and other people. We handle the technical bits of things, okay? So at the end of the day, we looked at it, we said, no, let's don't do a presser, because we have pictures to the effect. Yesterday we had a press conference. We showed pressmen pictures of political parties, including all 4 major political party representatives in the advisory committee meeting or meetings that we've had. We showed them, we showed the media, we showed them pictures, all right, where these people came, all right, we discussed not once, not twice, okay? And you also had APA, which is the association of all political parties in the country that are part and parcel of the advisory committee. So to say we've not included people or we've not done engagements to some extent, it might be a strong word, but it is disingenuous to us as an institution.
Andrew mentioned and cited representatives of political parties in the advisory council, but he also said that is not enough for inclusion. I mean, for something that has to do with the planning for the development of Sierra Leone, there should be more engagement and include those players into every step of the process.
I accept that is not enough, but for what I am talking about, which is inclusion, that is enough, okay? Because at this juncture, we wanted, or what was being put under the microscope was, how are we dragging other people along, you know, with the census, okay? And I can tell you authoritatively, Samuel, that we have tried as best as we can to do engagements. Even new, they came to us. We had a one-on-one seat, okay? We discussed these things, all right? Andrew Lovely and his team, they've been to us severally. I want to commend him for that. The reason why he's talking and it looks like he's talking with facts is because he would always come. He would always call and ask. So we would give him the information that he wants. But if you don't check, you don't ask, and there are other things that are technical that we don't put out there, all right? You don't get to see it in press releases and everything of that stuff. You'll just be speculating. You'll just be assuming, okay? So, again, I want to underscore the point that in every step of the way, we've brought political parties along. That is one. We've tried to include all stakeholders, including civil society. In fact, by the way, the Accountability Now Club, the Accountability Now organization, which is headed by Saul Amin, the Hill Sierra Leone, and quite a good number of other CSOs are part and parcel of the publicity committee. They're helping us to do outreach, okay? And very soon you'll get to see these people, okay? On TV, on radio, in communities, doing outreach and engagement, okay?
Now, Saliu's position and that of NEW is that Statistics Sierra Leone has not properly planned and is not well prepared for this census. Point being, a date was set for December 4th. That was moved to April 19th, and that has been moved again. So how do you respond to that?
Okay, Antonia, no country in the world, okay, let me put it this, let me narrow it down to West Africa, because we are in West Africa, all right? The superpowers of West Africa, which are Nigeria and Ghana, I want to give them as an example. Ghana has postponed their census 4 times with better infrastructure, better finances, better IT, and everything. They've postponed it 4 times. Nigeria, okay, they started their cartographic work in 2015, 2016. Till date, they've not been able to do their enumeration. Okay,
so is that
I'm coming.
For the situation we have in
Sierra Leone. In 2014 to 2015, when we had the census, we postponed 3 times. It's not a justification, but let me tell you, a census is the biggest statistical undertaking in any country. It's a process, it's not an activity. There are things, milestones that you have to cross before you do certain things, okay? And some things you just cannot do without them. For example, the cartographic mapping. You have to map the country. Let me tell you what happens. Where our cartographic mappers are going now to map, that is where the enumerators will be going to count.
So if you know these things that need to be done, that need to be in place before you undertake a census, then why not ensure that they are done before you pronounce that the country is ready for a census, or even put a date out for the census to be undertaken?
Antonia, you can never know anything that would happen in COVID period. I'll tell you why. Kenya, which is loaning us the tablets, has had an avalanche of closure of borders and lockdowns. I'm pretty sure they've had over 6-7 lockdowns. Even as we speak, Kenya is on lockdown. Okay? They are on lockdown. You can fact check that. They are on lockdown. They were supposed to, they are the ones that are actually loaning us or giving us these tablets. All right? Originally, we thought we were just going to, it was going to be easy, all right, to just get these tablets. First things first, we had the change of leadership at KNBS. They changed the Director General, like the Statistician General. They called theirs the Director General. They changed, all right? We had an MOU in place. When the new DG came, the new DG said, well, I was not here when you signed this, and this is a huge consignment of tablets that is going to another country. I need to review this MOU. So we started from scratch, okay? That was one. Now, when that was reviewed, it was approved and everything of that. So the bureaucracies of government now started, okay? Within the government of Kenya, between the KNBS and the Attorney General's office in Kenya, they needed approvals to be sought so that those tablets can be taken to Sierra Leone. That took in excess of 3 months, back and forth. And all of those periods, or during those periods, we had lockdowns. You know what used to happen? Even when people in the High Commission in Kenya were working, even when they were working, they cannot even move. Okay, because they have to be seated. When you have a lockdown in a country, you have to follow the rules of engagement of that country. Okay, so it took us time. In fact, to a point that when it was approaching April, in fact, in March, it was March, early March, it got to a point where we thought we will never be able to get these tablets. You know what happened? We had to engage His Excellency the President, retired Brigadier Julius Marabiu, to call his counterpart in Kenya, because it came to a point where KNBS said, moving those huge consignments of tablets from Kenya to Sierra Leone is a security concern, is a security issue. And it has to be decided by the Security Council, which is the utmost or the topmost decision-making body in the country. The head of that Security Council is the President of Kenya, okay? So he needed to make that decision. In fact, they had not even reached him yet at that time.
So at the end, it took the intervention of President Bill
of course,
to get that sorted. But the question I want to ask, your submission, is that not a justification of why these people are saying, no, it is not timely? Because there is COVID, and the world, the impact of COVID and its corresponding shocks, it's one that would say, oh no, let's put the census on hold. And censuses have been postponed, yes, simply because perhaps maybe these guys would say, oh no, they were cycle censuses. And this we're talking about a mid-term.
Okay, so let me also tell you this, Samuel. All the 2020 round of censuses in Africa, and you can fact check that as well.
Right.
When I talk with facts. All the 2020 round of censuses, you have a round of censuses. 2020, most countries in Africa are doing censuses. Almost all of them have been postponed, all right, because of COVID.
Right.
Okay? So, you thought they too never knew that they would run into problems? They knew. We knew we would run into problems, okay? But the magnitude of the problems we ran into is what we are talking about here, okay? Now, to say we postpone a census and we wait for another 5 years, okay, to have the gaps we had in 2015 inherent in the population, all right? A situation where districts that were formed like Faraba and Karine, for which we do not have disaggregated data as a date, it is even disadvantageous to them, because it means for planning purposes these people are disadvantaged. They are, all right? As we stand here, even as after we went and tried to do some work, you know, and stuff like that, we still could not have disaggregated data. Now, let me tell you, I was listening carefully, and one of the person from news said, when he checked, he realized census was not even in a strategic plan. We do a 4-year strategic plan. We call it NSDS. That is National Strategy for the Development of Statistics. The last one was 2016 to 2020, okay? It was done sometime in 2015, end of 2015, to cover 2016 to 2020. When did we think of doing a census? It was in August 2020 that the discussions around doing a midterm census, initiated by us, Statistics Sierra Leone, initiated by us, we found out under the leadership of Professor Usman Sanko, we unearthed these irregularities or these problems where about 60% of the country, for the type 3 localities, you cannot disaggregate the data. For example, Samuel, if your village is somewhere in Kubola, some village in Kubola, I tell you for free, we can give you, and your village happens to be in an enumeration area, your village is under 80 to 120 households, and your village is part of an enumeration area. What would happen is, we would give you the total population of the enumeration area combined. And if you want to take development intervention to your village, we will not be able to pinpoint your village and just give you the population of your village. Together with other indicators, all right? Facilities that are there, wells, boreholes, educational facilities, all right? Hospitals, things like that, okay? Because the census, because I've had this discussion all around. A census goes over and above just counting the population.
Where do we
there
stand
are
now?
numerous socioeconomic and demographic indicators that can be picked up from a census. And it is only when you do a census that you get those indicators.
So where do we stand now on the issue of the census? The tablets have not arrived. We saw what happened in Parliament yesterday when the Census Act was to be tabled, and all the other instruments following. So where do we stand now?
Okay, so as things stand, we are working on the cartography. We don't comment on the political aspect of things. I've said this, we are not politicians. In fact, let me make this clear, I won't hesitate to say this, that sometime in 2019, we even had to withdraw an appointment of somebody who was appointed as a director. He came to this country, he came from outside, he came from the diaspora, he came to this country. He wanted to be a director at Statistics Sierra Leone. We had a position that was advertised. He was the fittest candidate. He won the interview fair and square, outrightly, but at the end of the day, 3-4 weeks down the line, his picture was all over, contesting for a certain position within a certain political party. Because we are not a political institution. If an institution that is a technical institution, a data institution, you are visibly or conspicuously showing that you are part and parcel of politics, then people will even question the data, whether you are skewing it, especially to your political party or not. Okay? So we are not in the political mix. The political mix, we leave it to our advisory, our supervisory ministry.
From what you are in charge of, where are we?
Okay, so where are we? We are at this point where I am here at this moment to let people know that we are making progress. We've made tremendous progress. We've darkened the walls, almost all the walls of the corners of Sierra Leone. We went everywhere. We talked to people, okay? We engage district council chairmen. We engage mayors. I would pinpoint quite a few number of places where we went, where the people were so receptive. For example, when we went to Bombali, the mayor and his deputy, they re-echoed the fact that as far as they're concerned, they feel the population of McKinney was undercounted in 2015. all right, they feel this is an opportunity for them to actually galvanize around their people so that they can be counted.
Samuel,
that is where we are.
Do we have a date in sight?
We don't want to preempt any date. Okay?
All right.
We don't want to.
A simple question.
We don't want to preempt a date.
Samuel,
yes.
Samuel, at the center of all of this controversy is the issue of inclusion. So, and I hear you saying at the advisory committee you have political parties. But what is the opportunity for political parties to be included, say for example in the technical committee, and stakeholders like NEW to be included in critical committees like SLAG? So we actually broaden the process. So if people understand what your problems are, instead of really like you coming to the television to explain. So because we all know the political landscape, there are certain, press houses, civil society houses, people can know why this is being. So how do we ensure stakeholders share control over decision making and processes to some point that nobody goes out to complain?
Right.
Again, when you form committees, and you include people in committees based on their experts area or their expertise, okay? SLAG is a media institution, okay? It's the entire media landscape of Sierra Leone. I can tell you authoritatively that SLAG is part and parcel of the publicity committee. They're helping us with publicity, all right? NEW, I don't see NEW, except I stand to be corrected. I don't see NEW as a technical research institution, all right? So, what we did was we invited NEW to be part of the publicity committee. They reneged, all right? They got back to us to say they were not going to be part of the publicity committee, okay? Several other people that we contacted based on their expert area joined committees.
But
okay?
while you assume expert areas for
Based
people,
on
I can tell you, for instance, there are journalists who are experts in data analysis.
But when you say journalists, which my very self is, a journalist is somebody that is responsible for information dissemination. You can be an expert in another area.
So in
I'm
terms
coming, Antonio,
in terms of inclusion, the point Andrew is trying to make is, in terms of inclusion, is there a reason for the seclusion of certain members who are considered stakeholders like SLAG, IGR, NEW,
No, I want to underline that
either
word
put in a
seclusion.
box to be in the publicity committee.
I want to underline that word seclusion. The committees are based on hierarchy. The highest decision-making body of all of the committees is the advisory committee. Decisions that are taken at the technical committee are presented to the advisory committee for vetting and approval. Okay? The publicity committee is there. It interlinks between the advisory and that of the technical committee to push out the things we want people to actually know about the census. Now, we are not secluding anybody. We didn't seclude SLAG. They are part and parcel of it. We didn't seclude NEW. They are part and parcel of it. IGR and others, they are part and so we are open up. We want to be as open as possible. Mind you, we call this census the people census. Okay? There's we want the people to own the process.
Samuel.
In fact, for the very first time, Samuel, please let me land.
Quickly.
For the very first time, we have a situation in Sierra Leone where we are employing people to work for the census or to work in the census in districts or regions where they are actually indigenous of.
Okay.
Okay? Because before this time, what used to happen was you would have 10,000, 5,000 people imported from Freetown, taken to the interior.
Thank you.
To places
Thank
where
you, Samba.
they don't even know.
Let's quickly involve our viewers into the conversation. Here's what Samba Sandy is saying, the national chairman for the C4C. Hi, Samuel. I am following the discussions, but it sounds strange to me as national chairman C4C party because I have never attended a meeting with Statistics Sierra Leone, nor a rep from our party that I am aware of. Secondly, since it is only now that they are trying to legitimize the process, can one be correct to say that all what they had done before is illegitimate, or is it putting the cart before the horse? And here is what Justice Moisamba is saying. Okay, this is a complimentary message for Andrew. Andrew, continue to distinguish yourself from others calling themselves civil society societies with politicians behind them, whilst Andrew continue to discuss issues by identifying problems and proffering solutions in the interest of our country. May God Almighty continue to bless you and family. You excellently educated Marcella yesterday, and you equally doing so. Okay. The defenders of democracy yesterday are the destroyer of democracy today, until we Sierra Leoneans realize that our nation is bigger than any political party or persons. We will always find ourselves in difficult situations. May Allah grant our leaders wisdom. Sadu Jallo is saying, so many messages. Okay, Jobi Bangali Jr. Avadio, Bedra Tuturi Algali is saying, Samawise Bangura, the census figure has nothing to do with winning an election. Otherwise, APC would have won the 2018 elections. We're not averse to the president's proclamation of a midterm census. Our concern is the timeliness and due process. Why the rush? David Mbayo saying, forget about the political gains you scored in the last census and trust that this midterm census is for the good of the people. Are we expecting new hospitals, school, more jobs, agriculture, etc., that we need census, or just need it for election? Yeah, Abu is asking. The midterm census must go ahead as it's as stated, and MPs must behave maturely, humbly, politely, and honorably. Parliament is not a childish place at all. Amara Alpha is saying. I'm going to take 3 more messages. This is sad. Is that how opposition should behave? They are doing the government or the president but themselves. They are not doing the government or the president but themselves. Come 2023 or 2024, we are going to show them. The former president and his government created 2 new districts, corn and constituencies and wards in their strongholds. They are afraid simply because they think what they did in 2015 is the same that is going to happen again. They are crying foul. When they were doing dirty work in 2015, they didn't think about the concerns the opposition had. Now they are crying foul. Ambassador Mike Joseph Kanu say, Mr. Lavali, how did you know that the census were rigged and the numbers were manipulated? You were just trying to justify this midterm census. And the last message I'll take is from Harold Domingo. Do you have the resources to accurately and effectively conduct census? If the 2015 was wrong because of conducting it full of errors, why the rush to conduct it again and make the same mistakes? Don't you think it is just a waste of resources? We have hundreds of messages and the viewership is pretty much huge online, so it tells the interest of our viewers in this conversation. But the conversation does not end here, but we have to take a pause. Let's start off with you, Andrew, responding.
Basically, my lecturer in development policy used to say, define participation as a process by which stakeholders share control over policy making and implementation. So participation is not just taking part. It's when you talk and we agree on how to move forward. That's why, to me, Mr. Director, I think what is very important, we can actually lay the census controversy to rest if the issue of participation becomes, in the true sense, is implemented in the true sense of the word. So that's why, even if someone does not have the skill set, but if that institution is represented, they can definitely bring in someone with a skill set, and there will be justification, even if it's a box-ticking exercise, that you were in the room when this decision was taken. And to me, that's really to me, it's a little distasteful. So the question on how do I know that the census 2016 was fraudulent? We monitor the 2015 census 3 times. And if you go to our website, you can see the report. We did not develop interest in the midterm census overnight. And our advocacy is for the midterm census to correct the 2016 census. If we see that it's not correcting the 2016 census, we'll come back to the public to say, it's more or less the same thing. So that's why, we are actually encouraging Statistics Sierra Leone to ensure that there is a clear departure, from what we saw in 2014, yeah.
All right. And Saliu, your parting words.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think I've heard from my brother from Statistics Sierra Leone. I think we say the same thing. The only area we differ is in the conclusions. Because he's saying, despite all the explanations he has made, he's still saying, the preparation was perfect, and I'm saying it was not properly, planned for. Because, come look at it, when they started, we talked about COVID. They said no, they move ahead. And the reason given for the first postponement was the fact that, their international consultants will not move into the country. Again, coming back to the issue of COVID. Now, we have the issue of this tablet also coming from another country for the second postponement. When you are planning, you try to draw different scenarios. If this thing doesn't happen, what will I do? If this thing happens, what will I do? And because the planning was not done properly, that's why we're having all of these problems. And he also talked about, Statistics Sierra Leone inviting new to be part of the publicity committee of the setup. What we did as new, we raised concerns. We met with the Statistics Sierra Leone, the leadership of Statistics Sierra Leone. We had a very long meeting and we raised all the concerns that we have, which we think will serve as a barrier to the effective, conduct of the census. And they assured us that they will look at all of the issues we raised and they will respond to all of those. And since we left, they've never done that. So I'm not aware whether they wrote a letter inviting us to be part of the communications committee, and NEW responded by saying, no, we don't want to. But we are still waiting for their response because we raised a lot of issues, and they promised to get back to us with responses to those issues. So we are still waiting for them. That's all I know.
All right, and Samuel?
So let me start with the last point he raised with regards
quickly
participation and new participating. Andrew was on radio yesterday, one of the sister radio stations with Marcella. And if Andrew could remember, Marcella said it that new will not be part of the publicity committee, except I'm mistaken. But I heard that was very clear. All right? We wrote a letter to them.
Why would you even ask you to be a publicist?
Yeah, I'm coming. I'm coming.
Go ahead.
I'm coming. So we wrote a letter to them. Now, responding to the issues they had raised, okay? We didn't tell them that when we respond to the issues you've raised, we are going to put this in the form of an aid memoir and send to you. No. We had said, you violated XYZ. What you would notice along the line is, we will try all of these issues you have raised. Let us see how we can address them as we get along. They were procedural issues. They were issues that have got to do with how long will it take you to do this? How do you include political parties? How do you this? How do you that? And importantly, they had questioned the reasons for the census, okay? They said, why do we want to do a census? And we told them in no uncertain terms that in 2015, what happened was, and this was not intentional, and I want to make that clear, it was us, Statistics Sierra Leone, that conducted the 2015 census, okay? We are owning up to it. In 2015, what exactly happened was, when the coding was done at the cartography level, it was names. And when they came to do the census, it was codes that they used. So matching the two was a fundamental problem made by the consultants, mistakes made by the consultants, and we ended up having situations where, you know, the population of the enumeration areas, you cannot be able to disaggregate them. That was just a problem. We've never, at any point in time, questioned the 7,093,113 population that we have.
Thank you, Samuel. Thank you. Time will not permit us to continue, but I must say I see some very healthy conversation between Professor Sanko and Marcella in a forum, and they've agreed to meet and discuss the way forward. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for being part of the show.